Hi everyone, this is For the Love of Comics, and in this episode I'll be shining a spotlight on 5 of my favorite comics for young readers as well as some equally honorable mentions. By young readers I'm referring to an age range of 4 through 10 or thereabouts, after which I think we get into the teen and young adult territory. After the main titles, I'll start with some caveats on my approach in making a list like this, but if you don't care for the whys and the wherefores of my methods and only want to get straight to the list itself, I'll put some timestamps down below so you can skip back and forth as you wish. So, whichever way you prefer, let's jump into this list of 5 great comics for young readers. I made this a list of 5 instead of a list of 10, not because there aren't that many good comics for young readers out there, but in fact for the opposite reason. We're living in a golden age of comics right now thanks to the sheer range of subject matter and talent and vision and stories in the medium, and children's comics are sort of at the forefront of this. New writers and artists are jostling right alongside established masters of the form to bring us more varied and more unique comics than ever before. And while I hope that with my personal favorites and my honorable mentions I can give some idea about this range, it's still really just the tip of the iceberg. Simply put, I just haven't read enough kids comics to make a top 10 right now, and there are some big gaps in my reading. I haven't read El Defo, the award-winning comic by C.C. Bell, but I know parents and kids who love it. I haven't read any of the Anna and Frogger books, and I have not read Tiny Titans. I've heard over and over again that My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic is just terrific, but I have not read My Little Pony. This list is focused on comics for readers between 4 and 10, although most of these books could be genuinely enjoyed by readers of all ages. These are comics I have seen kids really respond to and get emotionally wrapped up in, and most importantly, they are great comics to read when starting out reading. They set the bar and expectations very high, they can be surprisingly complex for the ages they're aimed at, and they are stories that can be enjoyed many times over, even by a parent being forced to do so. As with my previous lists, I'm not ranking these books against each other. I'll be listing them very roughly in order of age of readership. So from youngest readers to oldest, although there is nothing scientific in any of this, just anecdote. So here we go. Our first recommendation for ages 3 and above is Owly, the charming and captivating forest fable comic series by Andy Runton. Owly is a near wordless comic about a sweet little owl and his friends done in marvelously expressive single-color brushwork, although I believe that all volumes are now also available in color. The Owly stories are gentle and sweet, just like the hero who gives his name to the series. Stories revolve around trying to make friends, helping neighbors, dealing with problems together, and other wholesome ideas that are nevertheless quite compelling. Because there is virtually no use of language, the storytelling relies completely on art and layout, icons and expressions, and this is where it sets itself apart. I think it is undeniable that Owly is pure, singular comics. You see dozens and dozens of sophisticated techniques here that make this comic something that is neither pantomime, nor a cartoon, nor a silent film, but reminds you and affects you like all of those. This also makes it a unique book to read together, as even children who have not yet learned to read can follow along and receive their first lesson in reading comics from one of the best examples of the medium. Next on our list of 5 terrific comics for ages 5 and above is Uncle Scrooge by either Carl Barks or Don Rosa. It's a bit of a cheat naming 2 different writer-artists who worked on the same character at different times, especially since their works run into a couple of decades and several volumes each, but it's almost impossible to choose between them. Both the original creator Carl Barks and spiritual successor Don Rosa made this Disney comic about Donald Duck's rich and miserly uncle an example of tightrope balanced comic storytelling. Carl Barks practically invented a new type of comics adventure that I particularly love, where Scrooge would pack up his family at the drop of a hat and set off for locations both far and near, usually in pursuit of some type of treasure. And although many of the stories were set up to deal with Scrooge's fortune or desire for wealth, they often ended up centering around other things completely. While Carl Barks's work from the 40s through the 60s remains indelible, Don Rosa in the 80s and 90s essentially revived Barks's style and ambition in longer adventure Scrooge comics, modernizing and updating the formula and also bringing his own incredible detail and dynamism to them. Luckily, both artists are currently seeing these handsome hardcover archival volumes, celebrating them being brought out by Fantagraphics. Taken together or one at a time, Barks and Rosa's Uncle Scrooge stories represent pinnacles of action-adventure comedy comics that were and continue to be irresistible to kids and grown-ups alike. Personal note, Scrooge in these stories is my favorite iteration of any Disney character ever. Up next on our list for ages say 6 and above is the Zeta the Space Girl books, a Lost in Space adventure series by Ben Hatke. The 3 books in the Zeta series tell of Zeta's adventures in rescuing her little brother and safely making it back to Earth and their parents from across the galaxy. The growth and learning Zeta undergoes as she encounters all manner of beings and worlds, coupled with her natural goodness and sense of fairness, makes for one of the most charming, inspiring and exciting superhero stories to start a child with. Ben Hatke's clean yet loose artwork does a great job of transporting us to faraway worlds and societies, while his character-focused writing creates a lovable and admirable hero everybody roots for. Very much in the mold of heroes like Flash Gordon, Zeta is not necessarily superpowered, but someone whose wits, intelligence and heart allow her to become a hero for many people, all while being grounded in the pathos of 2 kids trying to get back home to their family. Moving along our list, and also for ages 6 or 7 and above, we have the Hilda books, the magical yet matter-of-fact fantasy stories by Luke Pearson. Hilda is a plucky, intelligent and curious girl, a precocious and lovable protagonist. She lives with her mother in an idyllic fairy tale rural world and spends her time reading, drawing and exploring the Scandinavian myth-tinged countryside, which apparently holds trolls, giants, spirits and more. Over the series of 5 books so far, Hilda and her mother's lives go through many changes, including moving into the town of Trollberg, where Hilda encounters adjustments to how she lives, as well as new magical discoveries and explorations. Luke Pearson's stories find a new and fresh way to present the magical and the legendary. Instead of being epic and stuffy, removed from our daily experiences, he instead presents them as an everyday part of Hilda's life and worldview. So magical creatures can be pests or botherations, danger can be a risk worth taking for thrills, and curiosity can allow Hilda to be as bold and as unfazed with magic as she is with nature. Hilda is not an infallible, ideal hero. She makes a lot of mistakes and learns a lot of lessons. But the way in which these stories keep fantasy grounded in mistakes and consequences without ever losing the charm of Hilda's innate curiosity and inherent decency makes it perfect for kids to enjoy stories of magic and wonder that still resonate with daily celebrations of friendship, family and forgiveness. And finally, the last of my favorite 5, which some of our regular viewers may already have guessed, is Bone, the beloved and now classic comedy fantasy epic by Jeff Smith. Bone is a masterful achievement in comics, and I've spent a considerable amount of time celebrating it on this channel. If you haven't already, I urge you to check out our complete Bone playlist linked above, which includes an introduction and review of the series, a look at various editions, comparisons and more. To all of that, I'll simply add that Bone, by creating a character comedy out of an epic fantasy, allows kids to access the darker, more serious parts of the story by getting them invested. Because the series focuses so much on character and character decisions to move things forward, every bit of consequence really resonates with the readers. Nothing teaches the significance of caring for the characters in a story and how that affects the way you read the story better than Bone. Like the Lord of the Rings or the Harry Potter series kids may read later, Bone combines magical, epic and world-changing scenarios with dozens of characters and a steady stream of mythos, and does it while being very funny. This series is long-form epic fantasy executed in a way that has seldom been done so well, and is an easy choice for any reader getting serious about their comics habit. So those are, at least right now, my 5 favorite comics for young readers. It wasn't an easy list to make, primarily because of these honorable mentions that came very, very close. Mouse Guard by David Peterson. A wonderful set of tense adventures and glorious tales set in a world where mice have their own society, complete with a protective guard faction to help them survive in a literal world full of predators. Eye-popping art and the scale of the world building and a dead serious approach make it a standout read. Anya's Ghost by Vera Brosgol and Ghosts by Raina Telgemeier, two clever and thrilling riffs on classic ghost stories that also delve deep into characters and tackle real and hard questions for children like illness or identity and loneliness in heartfelt and empathetic ways. Little Lit, It Was a Dark and Silly Night, an anthology put together by Art Spiegelman and Francois Mouly, featuring some amazing writers and artists collaborating on children's comics. There are also the comics in Spiegelman and Mouly's Little Toon series of books, all of them classified by reading level. And finally, Amulet, which I've just started and finished only one volume out of the 6 published so far. This is a blockbuster series that is quite a sensation currently, and I can tell from the first volume that it has a lot of potential. Still, I need a little more to judge fully. Right now, it seems like a glorious mishmash of stories we know and love, and I'm hoping it develops a unique identity in subsequent volumes. The end of the first volume definitely had that promise, so let's see how it goes. So that's my list of favorites and honorable mentions of great comics for young kids. I didn't actually use any of my own childhood favorites except one, Uncle Scrooge, because, and maybe most young readers are this way, because I used to read everything with almost equal enthusiasm. If I leave nostalgia out of it, a lot of what I read wasn't fantastic. It doesn't mean I didn't enjoy them, but later in life, when I left comics behind for better reading, it was because I thought comics weren't capable of more than what I had already seen. By reading mainly great comics, I think it's possible to keep growing with comics and avoid that. I don't know if it's true, it's just the theory I have. What do you think? I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider hitting that like button to let me know. And which comics for kids do you think folks need to try and that I should add to my list? Please let me have all your suggestions along with questions and comments down below. This was For the Love of Comics, and as always, thank you for watching.